Michael Carter woke every morning at 6:30, brewed coffee in a small kitchen overlooking a crowded city street, and took the subway to a modest accounting office where he spent his days reviewing expense reports and tax records. To anyone who saw him, he was the definition of ordinary. His apartment was neat but unremarkable. His clothes were simple. His conversations rarely lasted more than a few minutes. Neighbors knew him as the quiet man who carried groceries for elderly residents and never missed rent. None of them knew that Michael Carter did not actually exist. The name was a mask worn by Don Moretti, the invisible ruler of one of the largest business empires on Earth, a trillion-dollar network stretching across technology, shipping, pharmaceuticals, energy, and finance. While magazines speculated endlessly about the mysterious owner behind Moretti Global Holdings, no photograph had ever surfaced. The board members who reported directly to him communicated through encrypted channels and private meetings conducted under layers of secrecy. The world imagined a ruthless billionaire surrounded by bodyguards and luxury. Instead, their emperor rode public transportation and spent weekends repairing old furniture. Michael preferred it that way. 20 years earlier, after surviving an assassination attempt that killed his father, he had learned that power attracted predators. The safest place for a king was among commoners who never suspected a crown existed. On a rainy Thursday evening, Michael left work carrying a bag of groceries. Traffic crawled through the wet streets while neon lights reflected off puddles like melted paint. As he waited at a crosswalk, a black SUV sped through a red light. Michael's attention sharpened instantly. Across the intersection, a woman stepped from the curb while speaking into her phone. She never saw the vehicle. Without thinking, Michael dropped his groceries and sprinted forward. The driver slammed the horn. Pedestrians screamed. Michael collided with the woman, wrapping his arms around her as both of them crashed onto the pavement. The SUV missed them by inches before smashing into a streetlight. For several seconds, rain fell around them while shocked bystanders gathered nearby. The woman stared up at him, breathing hard. Her dark hair was soaked. Her expensive business suit was ruined. Yet her eyes remained calm despite the chaos. "You shoved me into a puddle," she said. Michael blinked. "I saved your life." "That too." To his surprise, she laughed. Emergency crews arrived minutes later. The woman declined medical attention and introduced herself as Evelyn Hart. The name immediately registered in Michael's memory. Evelyn was the celebrated CEO of Merui Venture Capital, one of the most powerful investment firms in the country. Business networks frequently discussed her billion-dollar acquisitions and aggressive strategies. She was known for intimidating executives twice her age. Yet standing in the rain, she seemed refreshingly human. "Can I buy you dinner?" she asked. Michael shook his head. "No need. You saved my life. I think we're even. My groceries sacrificed themselves heroically." She smiled again before handing him a business card. "Then at least let me thank you properly someday." Michael accepted the card and walked away before his security team, who had discreetly monitored him from a distance, could intervene. He expected never to see her again. Fate disagreed. 2 weeks later, Michael's elderly neighbor Clara became obsessed with finding him a wife. At 78 years old, Clara considered matchmaking a sacred duty. Despite Michael's repeated refusals, she secretly registered him for a blind date event held at a trendy café. Michael only discovered the trap after arriving and finding a reservation under his name. Before he could escape, someone slid into the chair across from him. He looked up. Evelyn Hart stared back. For a moment neither spoke. Then she burst out laughing. "You?" Michael rubbed his forehead. "This is unfortunate." "For who?" "Probably me." "Good answer." The evening unfolded differently than either expected. Away from boardrooms and corporate negotiations, Evelyn revealed a sharp sense of humor and endless curiosity. She asked strange questions. If you could erase one invention from history, what would it be? What childhood fear never completely disappeared? Which fictional villain had the strongest business strategy?
Michael answered honestly. For the first time in years, conversation felt effortless. Hours passed unnoticed. The cafe closed around them. Staff stacked chairs while they continued talking outside beneath city lights.
Before leaving, Evelyn studied him carefully.
"You're hiding something."
Michael froze internally but maintained a neutral expression.
"Everyone hides something." "True. But most people don't look at exits every time they enter a room." Michael smiled. "Maybe I watch too many movies." "Maybe." She didn't press further. Over the following months they met repeatedly. Sometimes they explored street markets.
Sometimes they attended small concerts. Sometimes they simply walked through parks discussing books and terrible television shows. Michael discovered that Evelyn's reputation as an aggressive executive concealed profound loneliness. Her success had isolated her.
Every relationship eventually became transactional. People either wanted investment opportunities or feared her influence.
With Michael, she felt neither pressure nor performance. Meanwhile, Evelyn challenged Michael in ways nobody else did. She questioned assumptions he had carried for years. She argued fiercely during debates.
She mocked his habit of avoiding attention.
Instead of worshipping or fearing him, she treated him as an equal. One autumn evening they sat beside a river illuminated by floating lanterns.
Evelyn skipped a stone across the water. "Do you ever feel like you're living the wrong life?" she asked. Michael considered the question carefully. "Sometimes." "What stops you from changing it?" "Consequences." "That sounds boring." "Most truthful answers are."
She turned toward him.
"I've spent my entire career chasing goals. Every promotion. Every acquisition. Every milestone. I always thought satisfaction was waiting after the next achievement."
Her voice softened.
"Turns out success is terrible company." Michael watched reflections ripple across the river. "Then what are you looking for now?" Evelyn met his gaze. "I think I'm looking at him." The confession surprised even her. For several seconds silence stretched between them.
Then Michael reached for her hand. The city continued moving around them, unaware that two lives had just changed direction. Their courtship accelerated with startling speed.
Friends called them reckless.
Business commentators speculated endlessly when news leaked that Evelyn Hart was dating an unknown accountant.
Some assumed Michael was secretly wealthy. Others suspected manipulation. Neither cared. 3 months later, during a weekend trip to a coastal town, Michael proposed.
There was no elaborate speech.
No orchestra.
No photographers hiding nearby. They were eating seafood at a weathered restaurant overlooking crashing waves when Michael suddenly placed a ring on the table.
Evelyn stared at it.
"That's your proposal?" she asked.
"I had a better speech prepared." "What happened?" "I forgot it." She laughed so hard she nearly cried. "Good. The bad proposals are always the memorable ones." Then she accepted.
Their wedding occurred quietly at a small chapel attended by close friends and family.
For the first time in decades, Michael genuinely felt happy. Yet beneath the celebration, danger was already moving.
Across the ocean, a secret meeting unfolded inside a luxury penthouse.
5 powerful figures sat around a circular table.
They controlled competing corporations worth hundreds of billions. For years they had searched unsuccessfully for Don Moretti.
Now one of them possessed a lead. A photograph appeared on a screen.
It showed Michael entering the blind date cafe months earlier. "We're not certain," one man said. "But facial recognition indicates a 92% match with images recovered from historical Moretti family archives." The room fell silent.
Another executive leaned forward. "If that's truly Don Moretti, then why is he pretending to be a nobody?" "Does it matter?" asked a woman wearing diamond earrings. "What matters is opportunity."
For 20 years, no rival had managed to strike directly at the hidden emperor. Now they believed they had finally found him.
Back in the city, Michael remained unaware of the immediate threat. He and Evelyn settled into married life.
She continued running Merui Venture Capital.
He continued pretending to be an accountant.
Yet maintaining the deception became increasingly difficult. One evening Evelyn entered their apartment unexpectedly early and discovered Michael conducting a secure video conference.
Multiple executives appeared on the screen.
The moment they saw her, every participant froze.
Michael ended the call instantly. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Interesting accounting meeting.
Work emergency.
Your employees call you sir. Michael hesitated. Some offices are formal.
She studied him for several moments before letting the matter drop.
However, suspicion began growing. Small inconsistencies accumulated.
Michael occasionally disappeared for days claiming business trips despite earning an ordinary salary. He received calls at impossible hours.
Once Evelyn spotted armed security personnel discreetly monitoring a restaurant they visited.
Another time she accidentally found a private jet manifest listing Michael under a different name.
Questions multiplied. Answers did not.
Then came the night everything shattered. Evelyn attended a charity gala at a luxury hotel. During the event, masked gunmen stormed the building.
Panic erupted. Guests screamed. Security teams collapsed under coordinated attacks.
Evelyn found herself trapped on an upper floor as armed men systematically searched rooms.
Hidden behind overturned furniture, she desperately called Michael. The line connected.
"Michael," she whispered.
"There are gunmen. I think they're looking for someone important."
"Stay where you are," he said calmly.
Too calmly. "Lock the door." "The police, listen to me." "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except me."
The call ended.
Minutes later explosions echoed through the building. Windows rattled. Gunfire erupted below. Evelyn crouched behind a desk, terrified.
Then she heard fighting in the hallway.
Not random shooting. Controlled violence. Precise. Relentless.
The sounds moved closer. A body slammed against her door.
Another impact followed. Then silence. The handle turned. Evelyn grabbed a decorative lamp as a weapon. The door opened. Michael stepped inside wearing a black suit she had never seen before.
Blood stained one sleeve. His eyes carried an intensity she had never witnessed. Behind him lay unconscious attackers scattered throughout the corridor.
"Michael," she whispered. "We need to go." "What happened?"
"Later." He guided her through the building. Along the way, heavily armed professionals emerged from elevators and stairwells.
Every one of them immediately stepped aside upon seeing Michael. Not one questioned him. Not one hesitated.
They obeyed without discussion.
Evelyn noticed. So did Michael.
By the time they reached a waiting helicopter on the roof, she already knew her life was about to change forever. As the aircraft lifted into the night sky, Evelyn stared at the city below, then at the husband seated across from her. The quiet accountant she married seemed gone. In his place sat someone far more dangerous. Someone powerful enough to command private armies.
Someone whose secrets were finally running out of places to hide.
She folded her arms.
"Start talking." Michael looked out the window for a long moment.
When he finally turned toward her, his expression carried the weight of 20 years of deception.
"My name isn't Michael Carter," he said. "Not really." Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. "Then who are you?" Michael exhaled slowly. "My real name is Don Moretti."
The helicopter continued into the darkness while Evelyn stared at him in stunned silence, and far below, the surviving members of the attack operation reported a single alarming message to their employers: the hidden emperor had finally stepped into the light. Evelyn said nothing for nearly a full minute after hearing the name. The roar of helicopter blades filled the silence while city lights drifted beneath them like distant stars. Don Moretti waited without attempting to justify himself.
He knew explanations offered too quickly often sounded like excuses. Finally Evelyn laughed once, though there was no humor in it. Don Moretti. She shook her head. The Don Moretti. The invisible billionaire. The man journalists have spent 2 decades trying to find. Yes. And you thought this detail wasn't important enough to mention before marriage? Michael accepted the blow. I didn't want you marrying Don Moretti. So you.
Line apparently intended for one person only.
Don Moretti. Successor confirmed. Awaiting command. The entire facility fell silent. Thousands of hidden systems waited. Satellites remained synchronized overhead.
The machine remained active. And suddenly every person in the chamber realized the same thing.
Horizon wasn't a warning system.
It wasn't merely a safeguard. It was waiting for leadership.
And somehow, for reasons nobody yet understood, it had chosen Michael. Let me marry a lie instead? That hurt more because it was fair. Evelyn turned away and stared through the helicopter window.
During countless negotiations she had trained herself to remain calm under pressure, but this felt different.
She wasn't evaluating a hostile acquisition or a risky investment. She was re-evaluating every memory of her husband. Every conversation.
Every unexplained disappearance. Every suspicious coincidence.
Suddenly nothing looked the same.
How much of our relationship was real, she asked quietly.
All of it. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to decide for yourself.
The answer frustrated her because it sounded genuine.
She wanted anger.
She wanted a villain she could neatly categorize. Instead she found the same man who made terrible jokes, forgot grocery lists, and spent weekends helping elderly neighbors repair broken furniture. The helicopter landed on a private island facility several hours before sunrise. Evelyn stepped out expecting a luxurious mansion. Instead she found something resembling a heavily fortified university campus.
Modern buildings surrounded gardens and walking paths. Researchers moved between laboratories. Security personnel monitored the perimeter. The place felt less like a billionaire's retreat and more like a self-contained city. Michael led her inside a glass structure overlooking the ocean. This is one of our emergency locations. Our Moretti Holdings operates 73 secure facilities worldwide. Evelyn sat heavily in a chair. Of course it does. Staff members entered carrying food.
Nobody looked surprised to see her.
Apparently everyone except her had known who Michael really was. That realization triggered fresh irritation.
How many people know your identity? She asked.
Approximately 400.
Evelyn closed her eyes.
Wonderful. Only the entire planet except your wife.
Michael almost smiled but wisely stopped himself.
The next several hours became an exhausting marathon of revelations.
He explained his father's assassination.
The hidden empire. The decades spent operating anonymously. The enemies constantly searching for weaknesses. Evelyn listened while assembling a new version of reality piece by piece. Some facts seemed unbelievable until Michael provided evidence.
Corporate structures.
Financial records. Historical documents. Photographs.
By noon she no longer doubted his identity.
The problem was deciding what to do with that knowledge.
Before she could reach a conclusion, another crisis arrived. A security officer entered carrying a tablet.
His expression immediately caught Michael's attention. Sir. Michael accepted the device. His face hardened. Evelyn noticed. What happened?
Michael rotated the screen toward her.
News channels across the world displayed identical headlines. Leaked evidence links Don Moretti to global corporate empire. Grainy photographs accompanied the articles. Security footage. Surveillance images. Financial connections. Someone had launched a coordinated information attack. The hidden emperor was hidden no longer. Within hours, stock markets began reacting. Governments requested investigations. Rivals moved aggressively. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. 20 years of secrecy collapsed in a single morning. Evelyn looked at Michael. Your enemies? Partially. Partially? Michael zoomed in on a specific document. Some of this information wasn't available to my enemies. Meaning? Meaning somebody inside my organization helped them. Evelyn felt a chill. A hidden traitor was often more dangerous than an external enemy. Throughout the following days, the crisis intensified. Michael transformed before her eyes. The quiet accountant vanished completely. In his place emerged a leader capable of directing global operations simultaneously. He held meetings with presidents, negotiated with regulators, reassured investors, and coordinated internal investigations. Yet what surprised Evelyn most was not his authority. It was his patience. She expected arrogance from someone controlling unimaginable wealth. Instead, she found discipline. Michael listened more than he spoke. He delegated constantly. He accepted criticism without visible offense. Gradually, she began understanding why an empire had survived under his leadership. One evening, she entered a command center where dozens of analysts monitored financial markets. Massive screens covered the walls. Michael stood at the center reviewing reports. A young analyst accidentally spilled coffee across expensive equipment. The room froze. Evelyn expected panic. Instead, Michael handed the embarrassed employee a towel. Good news, he said. Now nobody can accuse us of having boring workdays. Laughter spread through the room. Tension vanished. Evelyn found herself smiling despite everything. Unfortunately, their enemies were not waiting politely. 3 weeks after the exposure, a cyber attack struck Moretti Holdings. Critical systems failed across multiple countries. Shipping routes halted. Communications networks collapsed. Financial platforms experienced coordinated disruptions. Losses mounted by the hour. During emergency meetings, executives proposed defensive measures. Michael rejected them. We're thinking too small, he said. This isn't about damage. It's about distraction. Distraction from what? Asked a board member. Michael studied incoming reports. Then he pointed toward a specific region on a digital map. They're targeting our medical research division. Everyone stared. The realization spread rapidly. While attention focused on public systems, someone was attempting to steal proprietary biotechnology data worth hundreds of billions. Michael immediately dispatched specialized teams. The response arrived just in time. Security forces intercepted infiltrators at a research facility in Switzerland. Several escaped. One was captured alive. Evelyn watched interrogation footage later that evening. The prisoner revealed an unexpected name. Victor Kane. The room fell silent. Evelyn recognized it instantly. Victor Kane was not merely a corporate rival. He was one of her former mentors. Years earlier, he had helped launch her career in venture capital. Charming, brilliant, and ruthlessly ambitious, Victor possessed influence extending through governments and multinational corporations. You're telling me Victor orchestrated all this? She asked. Michael nodded. He's been building an alliance against Moretti Holdings for years. Why? Because he believes the future belongs to whoever controls global infrastructure. Evelyn absorbed the information slowly. Memories resurfaced. Strange conversations. Questions Victor had asked regarding Michael. Interest that once seemed casual now appeared calculated. He used me, she said quietly. Michael didn't disagree. A week later, Victor made his move personally. During a live international broadcast, he announced the formation of a new coalition of corporations dedicated to dismantling what he called monopolistic influence.
His speech was elegant and persuasive. He framed himself as a reformer challenging concentrated power. Public opinion shifted rapidly. Investors grew nervous. Political leaders demanded oversight.
Michael watched the broadcast from his office. Evelyn stood beside him. "He's good," she admitted. "He always was." Michael muted the screen. "Good enough to start a war."
The war that followed unfolded across boardrooms, markets, courtrooms, media networks, and intelligence channels. It became the largest corporate conflict in modern history. Alliances shifted weekly. Fortunes disappeared overnight. Companies changed ownership through hostile acquisitions. Hidden scandals surfaced. Governments launched investigations. Yet amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. Evelyn stopped feeling like an outsider. Rather than standing behind Michael, she began fighting alongside him. Her expertise proved invaluable. She understood venture capital ecosystems better than almost anyone alive. She predicted competitor strategies, identified vulnerabilities, negotiated critical partnerships. Slowly, she earned the respect of Moretti executives who initially viewed her as merely the boss's wife. One particularly difficult night, after 18 consecutive hours of negotiations, Michael and Evelyn sat alone on a rooftop overlooking the city. Neither spoke immediately. Exhaustion settled heavily between them. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. "You know what bothers me most?" "Only one thing?" "Very funny." Michael smiled. "Go on." She leaned against the railing. "I spent years believing success required sacrificing everything else. And then I met an accountant who secretly owned half the planet." Michael laughed. "Exaggeration." "Fine. A third of the planet." Her expression softened. "The strange part is that the richest thing in your life wasn't the empire." Michael looked at her. "No." For the first time since learning the truth, Evelyn reached for his hand voluntarily. It wasn't forgiveness. Not entirely. But it was a beginning. Their moment ended when Michael's secure phone rang. He answered. Listened. Then his face darkened. Evelyn immediately recognized the expression. Trouble. Serious trouble. "What happened?" she asked after the call ended. Michael stared toward the horizon. "We found the traitor." "Who is it?" For several seconds he didn't answer. Then he spoke a name that made Evelyn's stomach drop. It wasn't an executive. It wasn't a rival agent. It wasn't even someone from the corporate world. It was Clara, the elderly neighbor who had arranged their blind date. The sweet old woman who baked cookies, gossiped about television shows, and treated Michael like family. Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible." "I thought so too. There has to be a mistake." Michael wished there were. Unfortunately, the evidence was overwhelming. Financial transfers. Communications records. Meetings conducted under false identities. Somehow, impossibly, Clara had been feeding information to Victor Kane's network for years. But the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the story became. Because according to newly uncovered records, Clara wasn't actually Clara at all. Her real identity had been erased decades earlier, and the woman Michael thought he knew possessed a direct connection not only to Victor Kane but to the assassination of Michael's father 20 years before. And at that exact moment, while Michael and Evelyn struggled to understand the revelation, the woman known as Clara boarded a private aircraft heading toward an undisclosed destination, carrying with her a secret powerful enough to destroy everything the Moretti empire had built. The news refused to make sense. For nearly 20 years Clara had existed as one of the few constants in Michael's ordinary life. She had borrowed sugar from neighbors, complained about rising grocery prices, knitted scarves for children in the building, and spent entire afternoons arguing with delivery drivers over packages that weren't even hers. Nothing about her suggested the cold precision required to infiltrate the life of one of the most protected men on earth.
Yet the evidence continued accumulating. Financial records traced through layers of shell companies.
Encrypted communications recovered from offshore servers.
Surveillance photographs dating back nearly 2 decades. Each new discovery reinforced the impossible conclusion. Someone had built Clara's identity specifically to remain close to Michael.
Evelyn spent most of the night reviewing reports beside him. Around 3 a.m. she pushed away a stack of documents and rubbed her eyes. Either she's the greatest undercover operative in history, she said, or we're missing something huge.
Michael stared at a photograph projected on the wall.
It showed Clara 20 years earlier. She looked younger, naturally, but the eyes were identical.
Calm. Intelligent. Watchful. We're definitely missing something.
An investigator entered the room carrying another file. Sir, we identified the aircraft destination.
Michael looked up. Where? Sicily. The answer immediately changed the atmosphere. Evelyn noticed several senior executives exchange uneasy glances.
Why does that matter? She asked.
Michael leaned back slowly. Because that's where my family came from. Your father? My grandfather. My great-grandfather. The original Moretti estate is there. Evelyn frowned. You still own it? Technically. Nobody has lived there for decades. Then why would Clara go there? Michael didn't answer immediately because he already suspected the truth. If Clara was connected to his father's murder, then Sicily wasn't a destination. It was a beginning.
48 hours later, Michael and Evelyn arrived on the island accompanied by a small security team.
The estate stood atop a coastal cliff overlooking dark blue water.
Time had weathered the enormous stone structure. Ivy covered sections of the walls. Wind moved through broken shutters. The place resembled a forgotten fortress abandoned by history. Yet signs of recent activity were obvious. Fresh tire tracks marked the gravel road. Security sensors detected power running through portions of the building.
Someone was here. Michael stood outside the massive entrance gates and experienced an unexpected emotion. Fear. Not fear of physical danger. Fear of memory.
He had not returned since childhood. His father used to bring him here during summers before the assassination. The estate contained some of his happiest memories. Seeing it transformed into a battlefield felt wrong.
You okay? Evelyn asked quietly. Michael nodded once. Let's finish this. The team entered cautiously.
Dust covered much of the interior, but several rooms had clearly been occupied recently.
Equipment lined hallways.
Computers operated from temporary workstations.
Maps covered walls.
Whoever organized the location had invested significant resources.
They advanced deeper into the estate. Then Michael noticed something strange. The security layout felt familiar. Too familiar. Defensive positions. Escape routes. Surveillance coverage.
Every arrangement mirrored strategies once used by his father. This wasn't designed by Victor Kane, Michael said.
Someone who knew my family built this.
Moments later they reached the central hall. A single figure sat calmly at the far end of the room.
Clara. She wore a dark suit instead of her usual cardigans.
Gone was the harmless elderly neighbor. The woman before them carried herself with quiet authority.
Despite armed personnel surrounding her, she appeared completely relaxed. Hello, Michael, she said.
Her voice sounded the same.
Somehow that made everything worse. Michael stepped forward. Who are you? Clara smiled sadly. That's a complicated question. Start with your name.
For the first time she hesitated.
Anna Bellini. Michael froze. Bellini.
The surname struck him immediately. It belonged to one of his father's closest allies. A man who had supposedly died alongside him during the assassination 20 years earlier.
Impossible, Michael said. Antonio Bellini had no children. Officially, no. Clara Anna rose from her chair. Your father protected many secrets. Evelyn watched carefully. Something about Anna's behavior felt wrong. Not threatening. Regretful. As though she had spent years preparing for this conversation and still dreaded it. Michael's voice hardened. You fed information to Victor Kane. Yes. You helped expose me. Yes. You were involved in my father's death. Anna closed her eyes briefly. No. The answer came with such immediate certainty that even Michael paused. Anna looked directly at him. I spent 20 years trying to prevent what happened to your father from happening to you. Then explain the evidence. I will. She gestured toward a nearby table covered in files. But you're not going to like it. What followed unraveled decades of assumptions. According to Anna, Victor Kane was not the architect of the conspiracy. He was merely one participant. 20 years earlier, a hidden coalition of political leaders, intelligence officials, and corporate figures had concluded that the Moretti empire represented an unacceptable concentration of influence. Rather than dismantling it legally, they orchestrated a covert campaign. Michael's father discovered the plan too late. The assassination that followed had never been a simple corporate attack. It was a coordinated operation involving individuals who remained powerful even now. My father knew? Michael asked. Near the end. Why didn't he expose them? Anna's expression darkened. Because he realized exposure wouldn't work. She walked toward an old painting hanging on the wall. Behind it sat a hidden safe. Anna entered a code. The door opened. Inside rested dozens of documents, photographs, and recordings. Evidence. Mountains of evidence. Enough to implicate influential figures across multiple countries. Michael stared at the contents. You had this all along? Yes. For 20 years? Yes. His patience finally cracked. Then why didn't you give it to me? The question echoed through the hall. Anna met his gaze without flinching. Because you would have used it immediately. Of course I would have. And you would be dead. Silence followed. Anna stepped closer. Michael, when your father died, you were 24 years old. Angry. Brilliant. Impulsive. I wasn't impulsive. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Michael ignored her. Anna continued. If I had handed you this evidence back then, you would have declared war against people who controlled governments and intelligence agencies. Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. She smiled faintly. I knew you. Michael hated that she was probably right. Anna sighed. So I stayed close. I watched. I protected what I could. By lying to me? Every day. The admission carried genuine pain. Evelyn finally spoke. Then why? Help Victor Kane? Anna's expression became complicated. Because Victor wasn't supposed to accelerate the plan. What does that mean? Anna walked toward a window overlooking the sea. Victor and I both believed the coalition had become dangerous. We needed information. I used him. He used me. Eventually neither of us controlled the situation anymore. Before anyone could respond, alarms suddenly erupted throughout the estate. Security personnel reached for weapons. A technician rushed into the room. Sir, he shouted. Incoming aircraft. Michael moved immediately. How many? At least 6 helicopters. Anna's face lost color. No. Michael noticed. What? Anna looked genuinely frightened for the first time. They're here early. Who? Anna whispered a single phrase. The directorate. Moments later explosions rocked the estate. Windows shattered inward. Dust filled the air. Armed teams descended from helicopters surrounding the property. But these weren't ordinary mercenaries. Their equipment was military grade. Their movements displayed professional coordination. Whoever they were, they possessed enormous resources. Michael pulled Evelyn behind cover as gunfire erupted outside. Security teams engaged immediately. Chaos consumed the estate. Through the noise, Michael turned toward Anna. "Tell me who they are." Anna stared toward the battlefield unfolding beyond the walls. "The people who ordered your father's death." Another explosion shook the building. Stone fragments crashed from the ceiling. Michael felt years of unanswered questions colliding with present danger. The enemies he had spent decades searching for were no longer shadows. They had come personally. Yet as armed attackers closed in from every direction, another realization emerged. If the Directorate was willing to reveal itself now, then something had changed. Something larger than Victor Kane. Larger than corporate warfare. Larger even than the Moretti Empire. And judging by the fear visible in Anna's eyes, whatever was coming next threatened not just Michael's empire, but the stability of entire nations. The battle outside intensified as helicopters circled overhead, and deep beneath the ancient estate, hidden mechanisms that had not been activated for decades suddenly came to life, triggered by a signal sent from somewhere far beyond Sicily. Someone else was entering the game. Someone neither Michael nor Anna had anticipated. And within minutes, the first clue to that mysterious new player would emerge from a sealed chamber hidden beneath the foundations of the Moretti family estate, a chamber that contained a secret left behind by Michael's father on the night before he died. The estate trembled as another explosion echoed through the ancient stone walls. Dust drifted from the ceiling like gray snow while security teams exchanged gunfire with the attackers outside. Michael barely noticed. His attention remained fixed on the strange mechanical rumble rising from somewhere beneath the building. It sounded old, powerful, and deliberate, as if gears untouched for decades had suddenly remembered their purpose. Anna heard it too. Her eyes widened. "That's impossible." Michael turned toward her. "What is?" "The lower vault." "What vault?" "Your father sealed it before he died." Another vibration traveled through the floor. Somewhere deep below, enormous locks were disengaging. Michael's instincts immediately shifted. The attackers outside were dangerous, but his father had been a man who never did anything without reason. If a hidden chamber had awakened after 20 years, it mattered. "Evelyn," he said, "stay with the security team." She crossed her arms. "Absolutely not. This could be dangerous. People have been shooting at me for 3 weeks. I've earned the right to ignore that argument." Under different circumstances Michael might have continued debating. Instead he nodded once. "Fine. Stay close." Anna led them through a side corridor while gunfire thundered through distant sections of the estate. The passage eventually ended at a massive library. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with books accumulated over generations. Michael remembered spending childhood afternoons here while his father worked nearby. For a brief moment the memories almost distracted him from the violence surrounding them. Almost. Anna approached an old fireplace and pressed her hand against a specific stone. Hidden mechanisms clicked. The entire structure shifted sideways, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "You knew about this?" Michael asked. "Your father showed me once." "And you never mentioned it?" Anna gave him a tired look. "The list of things I never mentioned is becoming very long." They descended quickly. The staircase spiraled deeper than expected. Electric lights flickered to life automatically as they moved downward. The technology looked surprisingly modern compared to the ancient estate above. Eventually they reached a circular chamber carved directly into bedrock. Michael stopped immediately. At the center of the room stood a metal table. Upon it rested a sealed black case. Nothing else. No treasure. No stacks of documents. No weapons. Just a single case.
The simplicity made it feel important.
Michael approached cautiously. A small screen on the lid activated.
Facial recognition software scanned him. Seconds later, a familiar voice filled the chamber. His father's voice. "If you're hearing this, then two possibilities exist," the recording said. "Either I am dead, or you've ignored my instructions so completely that you've somehow broken into my private vault."
Despite everything, Michael almost smiled.
The humor sounded exactly like his father.
Evelyn noticed his expression soften.
It was the first time she had seen that happen since Sicily.
The recording continued. "If it's the second option, put everything back and leave. If it's the first..." A pause followed.
"Then things have gone badly."
Michael felt his chest tighten.
Hearing the voice after 2 decades was like opening a door to the past. "Michael," the recording said, "there are truths I hoped you would never need."
The case unlocked with a soft click. Michael opened it.
Inside lay several encrypted drives and a leather-bound journal.
The recording continued. "The empire you inherited was never my greatest concern.
The empire was merely bait." Everyone in the room exchanged confused glances.
Bait? Michael inserted the first drive into a nearby terminal. Files immediately appeared across multiple screens. Photographs. Intelligence reports. Names. Thousands of names. Politicians. Military leaders. Executives. Intelligence officers. Financial institutions.
The scope was staggering. Evelyn scanned several documents before looking at Michael in disbelief.
"This isn't a conspiracy." "No," Anna whispered. "It's an ecosystem."
According to the files, the Directorate was not a formal organization. It had no headquarters, no official membership, and no public existence. Instead, it functioned as a self-sustaining network.
Powerful individuals quietly supporting one another across generations. Whenever one member fell, another replaced them.
Whenever governments changed, the network adapted. Wealth, influence, and information flowed continuously through invisible channels.
Michael stared at one report after another. The evidence suggested that major geopolitical events stretching back decades had been influenced by people connected to this structure. Not controlled completely. Influenced. Nudged. Directed. Exploited. His father had spent years documenting everything. "Why keep this secret?" Evelyn asked. Anna answered before Michael could. "Because exposing it wouldn't destroy it."
She pointed toward the names.
"You could arrest 100 people. Another 100 would take their place." Michael opened the journal. The final pages appeared handwritten.
His father's words filled the paper. "If you're reading this, then the Directorate finally revealed itself.
That means they've made a mistake.
For years they believed power comes from controlling systems.
They never understood that systems change. People change. Fear changes.
Their greatest weakness is the belief that they are inevitable."
Michael continued reading silently.
Then he stopped. A specific passage caught his attention.
"What is it?" Evelyn asked. Michael looked up slowly. "My father knew who would lead the Directorate after him." "After who?" "After the current leadership." Anna frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Michael rotated the journal so they could read the name.
The room fell silent.
Evelyn's eyes widened. Anna's expression transformed into shock. The name belonged to someone they all knew. Victor Kane. For several seconds nobody spoke. Finally Evelyn shook her head. "No." Michael reread the page.
The answer remained unchanged. According to the journal, Victor Kane had spent years positioning himself not against the Directorate but within it.
His public conflict with Moretti Holdings. His corporate coalition. His attacks. Everything may have been part of a larger strategy. He was never trying to destroy us, Michael said. He was trying to inherit them. Anna sat heavily in a chair. Dear God. Suddenly Victor's behavior made sense. The carefully managed public image. The selective attacks. The strange inconsistencies. He had not been acting like a man pursuing revenge. He had been acting like a candidate seeking promotion. A distant explosion interrupted their thoughts. Then another. Security communications crackled through Michael's earpiece. Sir, defensive positions are collapsing. The attackers have breached the eastern wing. Time had run out. Michael quickly secured the drives and journal. We're leaving. They began moving toward the staircase. Halfway up, another message arrived through the communication network. This one came from a security commander stationed outside. His voice sounded strained. Sir, you need to hear this. Report. A brief pause followed. Then, Victor Kane is here. Michael stopped. Confirmed? Visual confirmation. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. Of all possibilities, this was the worst. If Victor had arrived personally, then the situation was reaching a decisive stage. Minutes later they emerged into the upper levels of the estate. The battle had intensified dramatically. Sections of the building burned. Smoke filled corridors. Security teams escorted civilians toward evacuation routes. Through shattered windows Michael could see helicopters hovering beyond the cliffs. Then a voice echoed through the estate's damaged speaker system. Calm. Confident. Familiar. Victor Kane. Michael, he said. We've spent years communicating through lawyers, journalists, and intermediaries. It seems rude never to have a proper conversation. Michael moved toward a broken balcony overlooking the front courtyard. Below stood Victor surrounded by armed personnel. Despite the battlefield around him, he appeared perfectly composed. You've caused a lot of trouble, Victor called upward. Michael folded his arms. Likewise. Victor smiled. Did Anna finally tell you the truth? Some of it. Good. Secrets become exhausting after a while. Evelyn watched carefully. This wasn't how enemies usually behaved. Neither man sounded angry. They sounded like chess players reaching the final phase of a very long match. Victor spread his hands. You know why I'm here. The journal, Michael replied. Victor's smile widened slightly. Then you understand. You want control. No. Victor's answer came instantly. I want succession. The distinction sounded absurd, yet Victor clearly believed it mattered. He stepped forward. The directorate cannot survive in its current form. The old leadership refuses adaptation. They cling to obsolete methods. He pointed toward the burning estate. Look around. They're destroying themselves. Michael remained silent. Victor continued. Your father understood this before he died. That statement immediately captured Michael's attention. You knew my father? Victor laughed softly. Michael, your father recruited me. The revelation struck like a physical blow. Even Anna looked stunned. Victor's expression grew serious. Everything you've been told is incomplete. Your father wasn't merely investigating the directorate. He paused. He helped build it. Silence consumed the courtyard. Smoke drifted through the air. Helicopter blades thundered overhead. Yet for Michael, all external noise seemed distant. One sentence kept repeating inside his mind. Your father helped build it. Victor slowly reached into his coat. Security teams immediately aimed weapons. He ignored them and produced a worn photograph instead. Even from a distance Michael recognized the image. His father stood beside a younger Victor Kane. Both men were smiling. Not as rivals. As friends.
And in that moment Michael realized the story he had believed for 20 years was missing far more than a few details.
It might be missing the truth entirely. Meanwhile, high above the estate, hidden among storm clouds gathering over the Mediterranean, an unmarked aircraft entered regional airspace. Its passengers had been monitoring everything.
The exposure of the directorate. Victor's appearance. The activation of the hidden vault. They had remained silent until now. But as one gray-haired woman reviewed incoming reports, she finally gave a simple instruction. Begin Phase 3. The officer beside her nodded.
Target?
The woman looked toward the storm-dark horizon.
Everyone.
The single word hung over the conversation like a death sentence.
Everyone. Not Michael. Not Victor. Not the directorate. Everyone.
Hundreds of miles away, encrypted signals left the aircraft and traveled through communication networks hidden inside satellites, financial systems, private military channels, and dormant intelligence assets scattered across continents. Plans that had existed only on paper for decades suddenly shifted into motion.
None of the people below had any idea it was happening.
At the estate, Michael's attention remained fixed on the photograph in Victor's hand. His father stood beside a much younger Victor Kane. There was no mistaking the familiarity between them. The image wasn't fabricated. The body language was genuine. Friendship. Trust. Shared purpose. Michael felt as though another piece of his past had been quietly stolen.
Where did you get that? He demanded. Victor lowered the photograph. Your father gave it to me. Why? Because he expected me to survive longer than he would.
Evelyn studied Victor carefully. The man wasn't behaving like someone who had come to kill an enemy. He seemed frustrated, almost disappointed, by how events had unfolded. Then explain it, she called down.
Explain all of it.
Victor glanced toward her.
Gladly.
Before he could continue, gunfire erupted from the western side of the estate. Several of Victor's men suddenly collapsed.
More shots followed.
Confusion spread instantly through both forces. Attackers who had been fighting each other moments earlier now found themselves targeted by a third group.
Michael noticed Victor's expression change. For the first time, genuine concern appeared in his eyes.
They're here, Victor muttered.
Anna heard him. Who?
Victor looked toward the darkening sky.
The people who actually matter. Additional helicopters appeared over the coastline.
These aircraft were different from the others.
No identifying markings. No visible insignias.
They moved with chilling precision. One landed directly between the opposing forces.
Its doors opened.
A woman in her 60s stepped onto the battlefield. She wore a simple gray coat despite the chaos surrounding her.
No body armor. No visible weapon. Yet the reaction she provoked was immediate.
Several directorate operatives lowered their guns.
Others looked genuinely afraid. Victor's jaw tightened. Elena Vos. The name meant nothing to Michael. The reaction it generated meant everything. Elena Vos calmly walked forward while bullets and shouting echoed around her. Somehow nobody fired at her. It wasn't because they couldn't.
It was because they didn't dare. She stopped in the center of the courtyard and surveyed the destruction with visible disappointment.
This is embarrassing, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, yet everyone heard it. Decades of planning, and you've reduced yourselves to this.
Victor stepped forward.
You shouldn't be here. And yet I am. Elena looked toward Michael. Don Moretti. I've wanted to meet you for years. Michael remained silent. Elena's gaze shifted to Anna. And Anna Bellini. Still collecting secrets, I see. Finally her eyes settled on Victor.
You, however, continue to overestimate yourself.
Victor laughed humorlessly. Coming from you, that's impressive. Elena ignored the remark.
Instead, she turned toward the estate itself.
Her attention lingered briefly on the library windows.
Then she smiled. So the vault opened. Michael immediately realized she already knew about his father's hidden chamber.
That realization was deeply unsettling. Elena noticed his reaction.
Of course I know about it, she said.
I helped design it. Another silence followed.
Evelyn felt increasingly convinced that every answer simply created 3 new mysteries.
Michael descended from the balcony and entered the courtyard accompanied by Evelyn and Anna.
Security teams remained
tense but held their fire.
Everyone seemed to understand that the conflict had suddenly moved beyond ordinary violence.
Michael stopped several yards from Elena. Who are you? Elena studied him for a long moment. That depends on the decade. Try the truth. The truth?
She smiled faintly.
Very well.
30 years ago, I was one of your father's closest partners.
Michael's expression hardened. Another one. Your father had many. Elena nodded toward Victor. Some betrayed him. Then she glanced toward Anna. Some protected him.
Finally she touched her own chest.
And some failed him. Unlike Victor, Elena sounded genuinely regretful. Michael noticed. What happened? Elena's eyes drifted toward the ocean. For a brief moment she seemed older than before. Your father discovered something. The directorate? No. Her answer surprised everyone.
The directorate was merely a symptom.
Michael exchanged a glance with Evelyn.
They were both growing tired of half-answers.
Elena appeared to recognize that.
You've spent 20 years believing the world is controlled by powerful people, she said.
Governments. Corporations. Intelligence networks.
She shook her head. That's the story ambitious people tell themselves.
Then what's the real story? Evelyn asked. Elena smiled sadly.
The real story is that nobody is in control.
Not completely.
She began walking slowly across the courtyard. Every generation produces individuals convinced they can manage history.
They create organizations. Alliances. Secret networks. They manipulate markets, elections, conflicts. Sometimes they succeed. She looked back at them.
Then reality reminds them how small they are.
Michael listened carefully.
Despite the philosophical tone, Elena clearly wasn't speaking abstractly. She was leading towards something specific.
My father discovered what? He pressed. Elena stopped walking. A prediction. That answer confused everyone equally. Victor frowned. Anna looked puzzled. Even Elena seemed aware of how ridiculous it sounded.
Not fortune-telling, she clarified.
A model. She pointed toward the estate.
Your father funded one of the most sophisticated forecasting projects in history.
Michael searched his memory. Vague recollections surfaced. Researchers. Economists. Mathematicians occasionally visiting the estate during childhood.
At the time he had paid little attention.
Elena continued.
The project analyzed economics, demographics, technology, environmental pressures, political instability, resource distribution, social behavior.
Everything. To predict what? Evelyn asked. Elena's expression darkened. Collapse. The word landed heavily. Collapse of what? Michael asked. Modern systems. Nobody spoke.
Elena folded her hands behind her back.
The model wasn't perfect. Nothing is. But its conclusions were terrifyingly consistent. Different variables. Different assumptions. Different simulations.
The outcome barely changed. Victor's confidence seemed to fade slightly.
I thought the model was destroyed.
So did your father, Elena replied.
Michael felt a growing sense of dread. What outcome? Elena met his gaze directly. Within the next 15 years, a convergence of crises becomes statistically unavoidable. Economic shocks.
Resource shortages.
Mass displacement. Infrastructure instability. Political fragmentation. She paused. Not the end of civilization.
But the end of the version we're familiar with.
Evelyn immediately challenged her.
People predict disasters constantly.
Correct. Elena nodded. Most are wrong.
Her voice became quieter.
The problem is that the model kept being updated. And every update improved its accuracy. Michael thought about the hidden aircraft. The mysterious Phase 3. The strange urgency surrounding all these groups.
Suddenly a possibility emerged.
The directorate knows. Elena smiled without joy. Now you're asking the right questions.
According to Elena, the directorate's original purpose had not been power accumulation.
It had been preparation. Decades earlier, influential.
Individuals learned about the model and quietly began positioning themselves for a future they believed was coming. Some stockpiled resources.
Others built networks. Others infiltrated governments.
Over time, the original mission became corrupted.
Preparation transformed into control. Control transformed into greed.
New generations inherited the structure without understanding why it existed. Eventually, only fragments of the truth remained.
Michael looked toward Victor. And you?
Victor exhaled slowly.
I found pieces of the original records. Enough to believe them? Enough to worry. Anna shook her head. All this time?
Yes, Victor said.
All this time.
Evelyn stared at the three older figures surrounding her.
Anna. Victor. Elena. Each carried decades of hidden history. Decades of decisions made in secret.
Suddenly she understood something important.
None of them were villains in the simple sense. None were heroes either. They were people who had spent years reacting to fear. Fear of the future. Fear of losing control. Fear of being unprepared.
And fear had distorted everything.
Before anyone could continue, Elena's phone vibrated. She checked the screen.
For the first time, her composure cracked.
Michael noticed immediately. What happened? Elena looked up. Phase 3 has begun.
What is Phase 3?
Evelyn asked. Elena hesitated. Then she answered. The directorate's contingency plan. Victor went pale. No. They've activated it.
You said nobody would ever approve that.
Apparently I was. Wrong. Michael stepped forward. Tell me what it is. Elena looked directly at him.
They've decided the future cannot be managed through institutions anymore. A cold wind swept across the courtyard. So they're going to create a crisis large enough to replace them.
Silence followed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Michael understood. Not every detail.
Not the full mechanism.
Just the essential idea.
The directorate believed collapse was coming eventually.
Instead of preparing for it, they intended to accelerate it. Shape it. Control the aftermath. Build a new order from the ruins. Evelyn stared in disbelief. That's insane. Yes, Elena agreed. Completely. Michael's mind raced. Can they actually do it? Elena's answer came immediately. Not alone. Then what's missing? Elena looked toward the hidden vault beneath the estate. Then toward the journal left by Michael's father. You. Michael frowned. Me? Your empire. She paused. More specifically, what your father hid inside it. Michael felt another piece of the puzzle shifting. Somewhere within the trillion-dollar empire he had inherited, something existed that even he didn't know about. Something powerful enough to influence whatever came next. And judging by Elena's expression, discovering that secret might determine whether the future was merely difficult or catastrophic.
Above them, thunder rolled across the Mediterranean as the approaching storm finally reached the island, and far away in financial centers, military headquarters, and government offices around the world, subtle anomalies had already begun appearing, small enough that nobody recognized them yet, but connected by a pattern that would become visible very soon.
The countdown had already started.
And for the first time in his life, Don Moretti realized that all of his wealth, influence, and power might not be enough to stop what was coming. Rain began falling minutes later. At first it arrived as a light mist drifting across the cliffs, but within moments the Mediterranean storm unleashed itself fully. Wind howled through the estate grounds.
Lightning illuminated the coastline in violent flashes. Yet nobody moved.
The conversation had become more dangerous than the battle that had brought them there. Michael stood in the center of the courtyard, rain soaking his clothes, while Elena Voss, Victor Kane, Anna Bellini, Evelyn Hart, and dozens of armed personnel waited for answers that none of them seemed eager to provide.
Finally Michael broke the silence. What exactly did my father hide?
Elena looked at him carefully.
If I knew that, I wouldn't be standing here. You said it's inside my empire. I said it was hidden within the empire.
Michael hated vague answers, but he had learned enough over the past month to recognize when someone genuinely didn't know more.
Elena continued. Your father compartmentalized everything.
He trusted almost nobody completely.
Not me. Not Victor. Not Anna. Apparently not even me. Elena nodded. Especially not you. Michael almost argued before realizing she was right. If his father had truly believed future generations might misuse certain information, then hiding it from his own son would have been entirely consistent with his personality.
Victor stepped forward.
The journal. There has to be more. Michael glanced toward the estate.
The journal was still inside the secured case.
Maybe. Not maybe.
Victor's voice sharpened.
Your father never left breadcrumbs without a destination. The comment immediately caught Michael's attention because it sounded exactly like something his father would do.
Throughout his childhood, puzzles had been a favorite teaching tool.
Birthday presents hidden behind riddles. Family trips planned through clues. Even business lessons disguised as games.
If the journal contained a hidden trail, Michael might be the only person capable of recognizing it. They returned to the library while security teams established defensive positions around the estate. The battle had largely ceased. Not because peace had been achieved, but because everyone suddenly realized a larger threat existed. The Directorate's Phase 3 had changed priorities. Inside the library, Michael spread the journal across a long wooden table.
Rain hammered against the windows. Lightning flashed outside.
Evelyn sat beside him while Anna, Victor, and Elena watched from nearby.
For over an hour Michael examined every page.
At first nothing seemed unusual.
Notes. Reflections.
Historical observations.
Then he noticed something.
Certain words appeared slightly darker than others.
Tiny variations in ink density.
Invisible unless viewed under specific lighting conditions. He adjusted a desk lamp and suddenly dozens of markings emerged.
Evelyn leaned forward. That's not random. Michael nodded.
Carefully, he copied the marked words onto a separate sheet.
The resulting message appeared fragmented at first.
Then the pieces aligned. West Harbor.
12. Observatory. Below.
Anna inhaled sharply.
The observatory. Michael looked up. You know it?
Of course.
Anna appeared stunned. I can't believe I forgot. Forgot what? Evelyn asked.
Your grandfather built an astronomical observatory near the Western Harbor.
Anna shook her head.
It hasn't been used in decades.
Michael remembered it vaguely.
As a child he had visited once. The place had seemed enormous then.
A giant dome overlooking the sea.
He recalled old telescopes and dusty equipment.
Nothing more. Elena stood immediately. We need to go. Tonight? Evelyn asked. Thunder shook the building.
Elena pointed toward the storm. If Phase 3 has started, every hour matters.
Michael agreed. Within 30 minutes a convoy departed the estate. The observatory stood several miles away on a rocky hill overlooking the harbor. The structure appeared abandoned.
Vines covered sections of the exterior.
Broken fencing surrounded the property.
Yet as they approached, Michael noticed something strange.
The building had power. Tiny lights glowed inside despite decades of supposed disuse.
Security teams secured the perimeter while Michael, Evelyn, Anna, Victor, and Elena entered. The interior smelled of dust and salt air. Massive telescopes occupied the central chamber beneath the dome. Nothing immediately appeared significant. Michael walked slowly through the room, studying familiar details from childhood memories. Then he noticed an inscription carved into the base of the largest telescope. A phrase his father often repeated.
The sky only matters if you understand the ground beneath it.
Michael smiled despite himself.
Found something? Evelyn asked. Instead of answering, Michael examined the telescope mount. Hidden beneath the inscription was a small indentation. The shape matched a signet ring he wore, a family heirloom inherited from his father. He removed the ring and inserted it carefully. A mechanical click echoed through the observatory. Then another. Deep beneath the floor, ancient mechanisms awakened.
Everyone stepped back as sections of stone shifted aside. A circular platform slowly descended into darkness. Victor laughed softly.
Of course. What? Evelyn asked. Every time I think I've reached the end of your family's secrets, I discover another basement.
The platform carried them downward.
Unlike the estate vault, this chamber was vast. Massive. Rows of servers stretched into the distance. Modern equipment filled an underground facility hidden beneath the observatory. Everything remained operational. Screens glowed. Cooling systems hummed. The entire complex looked as though it had been maintained continuously for years. Elena stared in disbelief. My God. Michael felt equally stunned. What is this place? Nobody answered immediately because nobody knew.
Then one of the central monitors activated automatically. A familiar face appeared.
Michael's father. Older than in the previous recording. Tired. Serious. He looked directly into the camera. If you've reached this facility, then the situation is worse than I hoped. Michael felt a strange mix of comfort and grief. Hearing his father's voice twice in one day seemed almost unreal. The recording continued. There are two possibilities. Either the model was wrong. His father paused. Or it was right.
Screens throughout the facility illuminated simultaneously.
Charts appeared. Maps. Simulations. Statistical projections. Data filled every surface.
Evelyn stepped closer to one display and immediately recognized what she was seeing.
Economic indicators. Population trends.
Infrastructure stress models.
Resource consumption forecasts.
This is the project, she whispered.
Elena nodded slowly. The original model. Michael's father continued speaking.
For years, people misunderstood what we were building. They thought we were predicting the future.
We weren't. Another map appeared. We were identifying pressure points. Michael frowned. Pressure points? Anna whispered. Places where systems break. The recording confirmed it.
The project had evolved far beyond forecasting. It analyzed vulnerabilities across every major network supporting modern civilization.
Financial systems, supply chains, energy grids, communication infrastructure, transportation corridors.
The purpose wasn't prediction. It was resilience.
Michael's father had spent years identifying how to prevent cascading failures before they occurred.
Evelyn's eyes widened as she realized the implication.
This isn't a warning system. No, Elena said. It's a blueprint. Michael looked around the underground facility.
Suddenly he understood why the directorate cared.
Why Phase 3 had begun.
Why his father had hidden everything.
This wasn't merely information. It was leverage. Anyone possessing the model could destabilize global systems or strengthen them.
Depending on how it was used, it represented either humanity's greatest safeguard or its most dangerous weapon.
The recording reached its final section.
Michael's father seemed exhausted.
Older than before.
A man carrying burdens he could barely manage. If you're seeing this, then the people who inherited the directorate have forgotten why it existed.
He sighed. Fear always corrupts purpose.
The words echoed through the chamber. Then his expression softened slightly.
Michael, if you're there, listen carefully. Michael stepped closer to the screen. The future isn't something you control. It's something you prepare for. A faint smile appeared. Don't make my mistake. The recording ended. Silence followed.
Nobody spoke for several moments.
Finally, Victor walked toward one of the terminals.
His face had changed.
The usual confidence was gone. In its place stood genuine concern. The directorate cannot get this. Elena nodded. Agreed. If Phase 3 is based on these systems.
Victor stopped abruptly. He had found something. His eyes narrowed.
That's strange. Michael approached. What?
Victor pointed toward a series of active processes running across the network.
Someone accessed the facility recently. Anna frowned. Impossible. Not impossible.
Victor highlighted a timestamp. The access had occurred less than 12 hours earlier.
Everyone exchanged uneasy glances. If the facility was supposed to be hidden, then who had entered? Michael examined additional logs.
Then his expression hardened. They're still here.
The realization spread instantly. Someone had not merely visited the underground complex. They were currently connected to it. Somewhere inside the enormous facility, another person was moving through corridors and systems designed by Michael's father. Security teams immediately began searching. Minutes later, a report arrived through their communication network. Movement detected in Sector 7. Michael looked toward the map.
Sector 7 occupied the deepest portion of the complex.
Areas none of them had explored yet. Evelyn checked the location. What's down there? Nobody knew. The original blueprints appeared incomplete.
Entire sections of the facility had been intentionally omitted from accessible records.
Michael felt a familiar tension building. Another secret. Another hidden layer. Another piece of a puzzle his father had left behind.
But this time someone else had reached it first. As security teams advanced into Sector 7, surveillance feeds flickered onto nearby monitors.
Dark corridors appeared on screen. Empty rooms. Endless shadows.
Then, for a brief moment, a figure crossed one camera.
Not a soldier. Not a technician. A young woman. Perhaps 30 years old.
She paused and looked directly into the lens as though she knew she was being watched. Then she smiled.
Michael felt a sudden chill.
Not because he recognized her. Because she looked astonishingly familiar.
The same eyes. The same posture.
The same expression his father had worn in dozens of old photographs. Whoever she was, she carried an unmistakable connection to the Moretti family. And judging by her calm confidence, she hadn't stumbled into the facility by accident. She had come there for a reason. And she already knew exactly what she was looking for. The image froze for less than a second before the woman disappeared from the camera feed. Yet that brief glimpse was enough to leave the entire room silent. Michael stared at the screen. His rational mind immediately searched for explanations. Coincidence. Resemblance. Imagination. But the resemblance was too precise. The shape of her eyes. The angle of her jaw. Even the way she tilted her head while looking at the camera felt disturbingly familiar. Evelyn noticed Michael's reaction. "You see it too?" He nodded slowly. "Yes." Anna moved closer to the monitor. The color drained from her face. Elena noticed immediately. "What?" Anna didn't answer at first. She seemed trapped inside a memory. Finally she whispered, "That's impossible." Michael turned toward her. "What is?" Anna swallowed. "She looks like Sophia." The name meant nothing to Evelyn. It meant everything to Michael. He stared at Anna. "Sophia?" Anna nodded. "Your sister." The underground facility seemed to become completely still. Even Victor looked shocked. Michael's expression hardened instantly. "I don't have a sister." Anna looked away. That was answer enough. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Michael took a step forward. "Explain." Anna closed her eyes. 20 years of secrets already weighed heavily upon her, yet somehow there were still more. "Your father had a daughter." Michael's voice became dangerously calm. "Start from the beginning." Anna hesitated. Not because she didn't know the truth, but because she understood what revealing it would do. "She was older than you by 3 years." Michael felt his pulse quicken. "And?" "She disappeared when she was 17. Evelyn watched Michael carefully. She could practically see him struggling to reconcile the information. Every major revelation during the past month had concerned business empires, conspiracies, intelligence networks, and hidden power structures. This was different. This was personal. "Disappeared?" Michael asked. Anna nodded. "Officially." "Meaning?" Anna looked toward the surveillance screen. "Meaning your father hid her." Victor exhaled heavily. "I knew there were rumors, but I never believed them." Michael barely heard him. His attention remained fixed on Anna. "Why would my father hide his own daughter?" Anna looked genuinely sad. "Because she found something." The answer immediately connected to everything else. The model. The directorate. The hidden facilities. Michael felt the pieces shifting again. What did she find? The same thing he found. Anna gestured toward the underground complex surrounding them. The project. According to Anna, Sophia Moretti possessed an extraordinary mind. By 16 she was already working alongside researchers involved in the forecasting initiative. By 17 she had discovered inconsistencies buried within the data. Patterns nobody else noticed. Conclusions that frightened even the scientists who created the system. "What conclusions?" Evelyn asked. Anna shook her head. "I don't know. Your father never told me." Michael frowned. "Then how do you know she found something?" Anna's answer came immediately. "Because she vanished the next day." Silence followed. Michael looked back toward the surveillance image. The woman on screen appeared roughly 30 years old. The timeline fit perfectly. Too perfectly. Elena folded her arms. "If she's alive, then why stay hidden for 20 years? "Maybe she didn't have a choice," Victor said. "Or maybe she made one," Evelyn countered. Before anyone could continue debating, another security report arrived. Sector 7 team has reached the lower access corridor.
Michael immediately switched focus. Personal revelations could wait. Whoever the woman was, she remained inside the facility. And she clearly knew more than any of them. Live surveillance feeds appeared on several monitors. Security personnel moved carefully through dimly lit hallways. Sector 7 looked different from the rest of the complex. Older. Less technological. The architecture resembled something built before the main facility. As though an existing structure had been incorporated into later expansions. One of the security officers stopped suddenly. "Sir, you need to see this." His camera rotated. A large steel door stood at the end of the corridor. Carved into its surface was the Moretti family crest. Michael stared at it. "I've never seen that before." Neither had Anna, nor Elena, nor Victor. The door shouldn't exist according to any available records. "Open it," Michael ordered. The team approached cautiously. Moments later the massive door unlocked. Beyond it lay a chamber unlike anything else in the facility. Bookshelves lined the walls. Physical documents filled cabinets. Paintings covered entire sections of the room. It resembled a private study preserved in perfect condition. One of the officers walked toward a desk positioned at the center. "Sir." He lifted a photograph. "I think you should come down here personally." 20 minutes later Michael, Evelyn, Anna, Victor, and Elena entered the chamber themselves. The moment Michael crossed the threshold, he understood why the officer had called. This wasn't merely another hidden room. It was his father's room. Not a replica. Not a reconstruction. The actual office where he had apparently spent years working in secret. Personal items remained exactly where he had left them. Books. Notes. Family photographs. Coffee mugs. Even a jacket still hanging beside the door. It felt as though he might walk in at any moment. Michael stood silently for several seconds. Then his attention shifted toward the desk. A photograph rested upon it. He picked it up carefully. The image showed his father standing between two children. One was Michael at perhaps 10 years old. The other was a teenage girl. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. Confident smile. The resemblance to the woman from the surveillance feed was undeniable. Sophia. Michael stared at the photograph. 20 years. 20 years believing he was an only child. 20 years without ever hearing her name. Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder but said nothing. There were no useful words. Then Anna noticed something. The desk. Everyone turned. A small note sat directly at the center. Fresh. Recent. Not decades old. Someone had placed it there recently. Michael unfolded the paper. 4 words were written in neat handwriting. "You took your time." Evelyn blinked. "That's not creepy at all." Michael couldn't help smiling despite everything. The message felt strangely familiar. Playful. Slightly mocking. Exactly the sort of thing his father might have written. Or perhaps his daughter. He flipped the paper over. Another message appeared on the back. "If you want answers, come alone." Victor immediately objected. "Absolutely not." Elena nodded. "Agreed." Anna looked equally concerned. Michael remained focused on the note. At the bottom sat a set of coordinates. Somewhere deeper within the underground complex. "It's a trap," Victor said. "Probably," Michael replied. "Definitely," Evelyn corrected. Michael folded the note carefully. "She's been watching us." "That doesn't mean you walk into an ambush." Michael looked toward the family photograph still resting in his hand. The sister he never knew existed. The woman who apparently knew about the facility. The person who might possess answers connecting every mystery surrounding his father. He already knew he was going.
The only question involved how much trouble he would encounter once he arrived.
1 hour later, despite repeated objections, Michael entered the designated section of the complex alone.
The area lay far below the main levels.
Corridors gradually narrowed. The technology became older. Simpler.
Eventually he reached a large circular room illuminated by warm yellow lights. Unlike the rest of the facility, the space felt comfortable.
Lived in. Someone had occupied it for years.
Books covered shelves.
Plants grew beneath artificial sunlight.
Classical music played quietly from hidden speakers. And at the center of the room sat the woman from the surveillance footage.
She was reading a book. She didn't look up immediately. Instead, she calmly finished a page before closing it.
Then she raised her eyes toward Michael.
For a long moment neither spoke. Michael studied her face.
She studied his. The resemblance between them was impossible to ignore.
Same eyes. Same expression when concentrating. Same habit of analyzing before speaking. Finally she smiled. You got older. Michael stared at her.
You have no idea how strange that sentence is. The woman laughed softly. The sound carried warmth rather than malice.
Fair.
She rose from her chair.
Hello, Michael. Are you Sophia? Yes. Michael expected anger. Questions. Accusations.
Instead he felt strangely calm. Perhaps the past month had exhausted his capacity for shock.
You're my sister. Also yes. And you've been alive this entire time. Sophia nodded. As far as I know. Michael folded his arms. You understand I have approximately 10,000 questions. Only 10,000?
Her smile widened.
That's actually better than I expected.
Despite himself, Michael almost laughed. She sounded annoyingly familiar.
Then Sophia's expression softened. I wanted to meet you years ago. Then why didn't you? The answer came immediately. Because Dad wouldn't let me. Michael frowned. Dad's been dead for 20 years. Sophia's smile disappeared. No, Michael.
Her voice became very quiet.
He wasn't.
The words struck harder than any revelation before them. For a moment Michael genuinely thought he had misheard.
Sophia watched the realization spread across his face.
Then she slowly reached into her pocket and removed a small object.
A photograph. Recent.
Very recent.
She handed it to him. Michael looked down. His hands froze.
The image showed Sophia standing beside an older man with gray hair and a beard. Time had changed his appearance. Age had altered his features. Yet there was no possibility of mistake.
The man smiling beside Sophia was Michael's father. Alive.
And according to the date stamped on the photograph, the picture had been taken less than 6 months earlier.
For several seconds Michael could not process what he was seeing.
His mind rejected the photograph before it even attempted to analyze it.
The image had to be fake.
Altered.
Manufactured. Some elaborate manipulation.
Yet the longer he stared, the more impossible those explanations became. The smile was unmistakable.
Not merely the face. The expression. The slight tilt of the head. The way one eyebrow sat marginally higher than the other. Tiny details no artificial recreation would capture so naturally. Michael looked up slowly. No. Sophia remained silent. No, he repeated.
I buried him.
You buried someone.
Her voice was gentle rather than confrontational.
It wasn't him. Michael felt anger rising.
Not because he believed her.
Because a part of him was beginning to. That's impossible. Sophia nodded. I know. 20 years. I know. 20 years.
The words echoed through the chamber.
Sophia didn't flinch. She simply waited. Eventually Michael looked back at the photograph. His breathing slowed. Logic reasserted itself. If this was a deception, it was an extraordinary one. If it was true, then everything changed. Everything. Start talking, he said.
Sophia walked toward a nearby table and poured 2 cups of coffee. The casualness of the gesture felt surreal. They were discussing a dead man who might not be dead, yet she acted as though they were catching up after a family dinner. She handed him a cup. You drink coffee exactly like he did.
Michael ignored the comment. Sophia smiled faintly. Fair enough. She sat across from him. Dad survived the assassination attempt. Michael said nothing. Sophia continued. Barely. Most people involved believed he died. Including me. Especially you. Michael clenched his jaw. Why? Sophia looked down at her coffee. Because that was the only way to keep you alive.
Michael hated how often he had heard variations of that explanation recently. Everyone seemed convinced that lying to him had been an act of protection. You expect me to believe he watched from hiding while I spent 20 years thinking he was dead?
Sophia met his gaze. No. No? I expect you to be furious. Michael stared at her. Good. Because I am. You should be.
That answer disrupted the anger slightly. He had expected excuses.
Defenses. Justifications.
Instead, Sophia seemed perfectly willing to admit the damage caused.
Then why, he? Asked again. Sophia exhaled slowly. Because after the assassination attempt, Dad discovered something worse than the directorate. Michael immediately thought of the model. The project. The hidden forecasts. What? Sophia hesitated. A group within the directorate. Elena mentioned corruption. Not corruption. Sophia shook her head. Transformation.
She stood and walked toward one wall of the chamber. A large screen activated automatically.
Images appeared. Historical photographs. Internal documents. Surveillance reports. Some looked decades old. Others appeared recent.
Most members of the directorate genuinely believed they were preparing humanity for instability.
Sophia pointed toward one section of the screen. Then a faction emerged. Michael studied the files. A faction? People who stopped believing collapse should be prevented. Sophia's expression hardened. They decided collapse should be accelerated. Michael remembered Elena's warning about Phase 3. Suddenly the concept felt much less abstract. Sophia continued. Dad discovered them years before the assassination. At first he thought they were extremists operating independently. Another series of files appeared. Financial transfers. Political operations. Infrastructure projects. He was wrong. Michael examined the information carefully. The pattern became increasingly obvious. Certain individuals repeatedly appeared across unrelated events spanning decades. The same names surfaced near financial crises, regional conflicts, resource shortages, and political destabilization campaigns. How many? Michael asked quietly. Sophia gave a humorless laugh. That's the terrifying part. What? Nobody knows. The screen changed again. The faction stopped functioning like an organization. It became an idea. Michael understood immediately. Ideas were harder to destroy than institutions. You could arrest leaders. Freeze accounts. Dismantle networks. But ideas simply migrated into new minds. Sophia nodded as if reading his thoughts. Exactly. She deactivated the screen and sat down again.
When Dad realized how deeply they had penetrated existing systems, he made a decision.
Michael already suspected the answer. He disappeared. Yes. And took you with him. Sophia looked away briefly. At first. Michael noticed the phrasing immediately. At first? Sophia smiled faintly. I wasn't exactly cooperative. That sounded believable.
The more time he spent with her, the more he recognized traits that felt familiar.
Stubbornness among them. What happened? He asked. Sophia leaned back.
For years we moved constantly.
Different countries. Different identities. Different projects.
Her expression softened slightly.
Dad spent most of that time preparing. Preparing for what? Sophia looked directly at him. You. Michael blinked. Me?
He always knew you'd eventually inherit everything.
Sophia folded her arms. The empire. The hidden networks. The responsibilities. Michael struggled to reconcile the statement with 20 years of silence. Then why never contact me? Sophia's answer came immediately. Because every time he considered it, somebody died. Michael froze. Sophia's expression grew darker. People around you were being monitored. Investigated. Tested. By the faction? By multiple groups. Michael remembered the endless security precautions surrounding his life. The paranoia. The secrecy. Suddenly some of it made more sense. Not all of it. But enough. Sophia stood and walked toward a nearby cabinet.
From inside she removed a worn notebook.
Unlike the materials in the hidden vaults, this one appeared ordinary. Personal. She handed it to him. What's this? Dad's journal. Michael frowned. I already found a journal.
That was his business journal.
Sophia's voice softened. This one was about family. Michael opened the notebook cautiously. The first page contained his father's handwriting. Familiar. Immediate. Painfully familiar. He turned another page. Then another.
The entries covered years.
Reflections. Regrets. Observations. Thoughts about Michael. Thoughts about Sophia. Some were brief.
Others stretched across multiple pages.
Michael stopped at one entry.
His father's handwriting seemed unusually heavy.
Michael thinks I abandoned him.
One day he'll learn I did exactly that.
The difference between necessity and betrayal means very little to the person left behind. Michael stared at the sentence. Sophia watched quietly. He wrote about you constantly. Michael kept reading. Birthdays he missed.
Achievements observed from a distance.
Concerns. Pride. Guilt. Endless guilt.
By the time he reached the final entries, his hands were shaking slightly. The last pages were recent. Very recent.
Only months old. Then he found a date. 6 months ago. The same period as the photograph. He read silently.
If you're reading this, then Sophia finally ignored my instructions.
Again. That made him smile despite everything. The next lines erased the smile immediately. I don't have much time left. Michael looked up. Sophia nodded slowly. Keep reading. He did.
The words became increasingly difficult to process.
Not because they were confusing. Because they were clear. Too clear.
According to the final entries, Michael's father had indeed remained alive for 2 decades.
But not anymore. 6 months earlier he had died. For real this time. Michael closed the journal slowly. He's gone. Sophia nodded. Yes. 6 months ago. Yes. Michael sat in silence.
The emotional impact surprised him. Learning his father had survived should have felt miraculous. Learning he had died again should have felt devastating. Instead, both emotions collided into something far more complicated. Grief for lost years. Relief that his father had lived. Anger over the deception. Gratitude. Resentment. Love. None of it fit neatly together. Sophia seemed to understand. She didn't interrupt. Eventually Michael looked up. Why reveal this now? Sophia's expression changed. The warmth disappeared. What remained was urgency. Because Dad left one final instruction. Michael immediately focused. What instruction? Sophia walked toward the central terminal and activated a secure file. Maps appeared. Not forecasts. Not infrastructure models. Locations. Hundreds of them scattered across the globe. Michael frowned. What am I looking at? Sophia's voice became very serious. The real reason the empire exists. Michael stared at the screen. What? Sophia enlarged one section of the map. Facilities appeared. Warehouses. Research centers. Agricultural complexes. Energy reserves. Transportation hubs. Communication systems. Thousands of assets linked together. The empire wasn't built to make money. Michael almost laughed. It made plenty. Yes. Sophia nodded. Because it needed to. She pointed toward the global network. This was always the objective. Understanding arrived gradually. Then all at once. The hidden infrastructure mirrored the logic of the forecasting model. Resilience. Redundancy. Recovery. Systems designed not to dominate society but to support it during crises. Michael looked at Sophia in disbelief. The entire empire was a contingency plan. Michael stared at the map. Decades of acquisitions. Investments. Expansion. Strategic decisions. Everything suddenly looked different. His father hadn't been building wealth. Wealth had merely been the fuel. He had been building capacity. Insurance. A backup framework capable of stabilizing regions during systemic failures. Sophia nodded. Now you understand why Phase 3 matters. Michael did. If the faction accelerating collapse gained control of those resources, they could shape the future. If responsible people controlled them, they might prevent catastrophe. The empire wasn't the prize. It was the battlefield. A warning tone suddenly interrupted the conversation. Both turned toward a nearby monitor. Security alerts flashed across the screen. Multiple unauthorized access attempts. Network intrusions. External penetrations. Sophia's expression hardened immediately. They found us. Michael stood. Who? Sophia didn't answer right away. She checked several incoming reports. Then she looked at him. For the first time since they met, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. Not the directorate. Then who? Sophia stared at the screen. The people the directorate was afraid of. Silence followed. Michael remembered Elena's reaction when Phase 3 activated. He remembered Victor's concern. Anna's fear. Pieces connected rapidly. The faction. The hidden influence. The accelerating crisis. How many? He asked. Sophia gave a grim smile. Enough. Alarms intensified throughout the underground complex. Above them, throughout the observatory, emergency systems activated. Security personnel began reporting perimeter breaches. Yet the most alarming detail appeared on the central monitor itself. A single message replaced every screen in the facility. White letters against a black background.
Simple. Direct. Personal regards, Don Moretti. We've been waiting for you.
Beneath the message appeared a countdown timer.
And it was already ticking. The countdown began at 20 minutes. No explanation. No demands.
No threats beyond the obvious implication that whoever had sent the message wanted everyone watching it to understand one thing: they controlled the situation. Throughout the underground complex, alarms continued sounding while technicians attempted to isolate the intrusion.
Nothing worked. Every system they disconnected reappeared moments later.
Every firewall failed. Every safeguard collapsed. It was as though the attackers already knew the architecture better than the people defending it. Michael and Sophia hurried toward the central operations level while security teams flooded the corridors. By the time they arrived, Evelyn, Anna, Victor, and Elena were already gathered around the main command table. The countdown hovered above them on dozens of screens.
19 minutes and 12 seconds. Tell me somebody knows what's happening, Michael said. Nobody answered. That was answer enough.
Victor looked furious.
This shouldn't be possible. Elena laughed bitterly. We've been saying that a lot lately. Michael noticed something unusual. Elena was afraid. Truly afraid. Not concerned. Not cautious. Afraid.
Considering everything he had learned about her, that fact mattered.
You know who this is, he said. Elena didn't deny it. I know who I think it is. Who? Elena looked toward the countdown.
The architects.
Silence followed.
Sophia closed her eyes. Victor cursed under his breath.
Anna looked exhausted.
Only Evelyn and Michael appeared completely lost. Apparently everyone except us knows what that means, Evelyn said.
Elena folded her arms.
Because most people who learn about them don't live long enough to discuss it. Michael was rapidly losing patience with mysterious answers.
Enough. Who are they? Elena took a slow breath.
Years ago, before the directorate became what it is now, there were people who considered the entire project flawed.
The forecasting project? Evelyn asked. Everything. Elena pointed around the room. The model. The preparation networks. The contingency systems. All of it. Michael frowned. Why? Elena's expression darkened. Because they believed collapse wasn't a problem to solve.
Sophia finished the sentence.
They believed it was an opportunity. Michael remembered hearing something similar before.
But this felt different.
More extreme. Elena nodded. Most members of the directorate wanted stability. Even the corrupt ones wanted control.